the idea that you have to see this doctor every 30 days is false. That's not
Mm.
true. There's nothing in the rule that talks about that. What the rule does say is that
Vigorous podcast today, joined with Rick Collins, criminal defense lawyer in America. We recently met at the Mr. Olympia in what was it, December
December,
2022.
yep, December
Yeah,
in Las
this
Vegas.
right. It was a great meeting. I've read so many of your articles and I've heard about you for many years. And this was the first opportunity for me to actually meet you through Scott McNally. And after we started talking a little bit, I think we hang around a little bit at the meet and greet there as well. And then you asked me if you want to do an interview together for muscular development.
I
So
did.
that is now published. Thank you so much for your support in that, and I got a lot of great feedback on that as well.
It came out in the April edition of
Hmm.
Muscular Development. And as
Yes,
you can see, we've got some great pictures here of
there you
you
go.
and me, as
And
well
Rick,
as
yeah.
pictures of you and Nan here.
Hmm.
And Scott
Scott.
McNally also got his picture in there too. So
He was very happy. Yeah, that he finally made it into an MD himself. Yeah.
So yeah, so that's the April issue, and that's out there, and it was a great interview, and I got great feedback. There's also a longer version of it online
Mhm.
at musculardevelopment.com, so people
Right.
can look for it there, and that's got some content that didn't, just for space, didn't make it into
Right.
the print version. But it was very well received. I heard great feedback from Steve
Mhm.
Bleckman, the publisher of the
Okay, good.
magazine, and from the editorial staff. So rock star status for you. Thank you for
Awesome. Yeah.
doing that. And
Thank you
and
very
and
much.
so you one hand washes the other, and so I appreciate your hosting me on your show, on your
Yes.
channel, and I'd love to, for those who might not be able to access the column in print, or who just want to kind of hear it in a discussion. We can certainly cover that same ground and maybe some additional
For sure.
ground and
Yeah.
additional issues here today. And I think it'll be fun. I enjoyed hanging out with you at the Olympia, and hopefully we'll
Yeah, it
do
was a
that
great time.
again, and maybe at some other shows as well here in the United States. I've been
Yeah.
to Thailand too,
Yeah,
where
you've
you
been
are
to
too.
Thailand, right? How
Yes, I
long
have.
ago was that?
I think it was about 10 years ago. So I don't know
Oh,
how much has changed since then, but I was there for a conference, and
yeah.
did a little exploring, including in some of the pharmacies, to see what the
Right.
availability of anabolics would be there, and compare it to here in the U.S., which is an interesting comparison.
It is. Yeah, it's basically a rogue pharmacy. So some of the entertainment areas, they have pharmacies that sell steroids over the table, so from behind the counter on display, just like you have all your law books in the background. You would be able to see, the law, and in the pharmacies here, you would be able to see the steroids if they're
Right.
FDA approved. And then some of the more entrepreneurial pharmacies that would sell steroids from the back, which are not FDA approved. They might still be FDA approved in other countries, but most of it is just underground labs with various qualities. And I've been very adamant that I tell most people try to avoid those underground labs because you don't know what's actually inside. And the
Right.
inflammatory carrier oil is very bad for your health. So
Right.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. So it's a bit of it's like you have to be a little bit of a cowboy if you want to survive here the steroid scene.
Is there a
But
difference? Is there more availability in like hospital pharmacies? Is that where?
no, no. So in the hospitals, they only prescribe a select few products, and some of those hospital products might end up in the pharmacies because they have a special connection. But in the hospitals on prescription, and technically testosterone and all the other steroids are only available on prescription. But the pharmacies generally don't follow those regulations. Or that when they see a foreigner, they're like, yeah, okay, he's a foreigner, he's not one of us, so he doesn't need a script like the rest of us do.
I
So it's
see.
very easy to acquire. Yeah, it's very easy to acquire in the pharmacies. But if you go to the hospital where I got a testosterone replacement script from, then you actually need to go through the ringer, do your blood work, talk with an endocrinologist, show them that you're androgen deficient, which is for bodybuilders easy. You just stop injecting for a while, and then you can get your script. Yeah, there's always a loophole in that
Right.
sense.
Right. Of
But
course.
most of the stuff that bodybuilders use, there's no scripts for that, but it is available. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's very different here in the U.S. As I'm sure you know, and I guess we should say that nothing we talk about is it could be construed as legal advice or medical advice.
Hmm.
The old disclaimer, but laws in different countries are different. Here in the U.S., we've got controlled substance status, which is Schedule 3 controlled substance status for anabolic steroids, including testosterone, which puts higher burdens on prescribers
Right.
and certainly more risk for those who are involved in the underground market.
Hmm.
Canada is different. In Canada, steroids are not controlled substances. Very, very different regulatory status. And so different countries have different ways of dealing with steroids. The US, probably as it is in many things, is sort of more draconian, more pro war on
Yeah.
drugs generally. And so back in the 1980s, Canadian sprinter Ben Johnson won the 100 meters at the Olympics in Seoul and then tested positive for Winnie. And
Hmm.
it was an international doping scandal. He beat the American Carl Lewis, and members of the United States Congress went ballistic. And what are we going to do about doping in sports? And so
Hmm.
they categorized anabolic steroids, including testosterone, as Schedule 3 controlled substances. And that's important for a lot of what's going on today in the US, including there's a proposed rule by the DEA that we can talk about a little bit, which affects
Right.
TRT clinics and online clinics for
Hmm.
testosterone replacement.
Right. So I believe that the first draft of that was enforced in what, the early 90s, and then the second one was around 2002, 2004, when they added all the pro hormones and some of
Right,
those the before the SARM time, everything that was
right.
be able to be sold at GNC, all those steroid like molecules. Yeah, they added that to the list, and that's how kind of SARMs and now peptides started becoming more popular, because now that is the gray area supplementation. It's
So
funny how it
it's
evolves over time.
Absolutely. I mean, it's basic demand and supply, right? If
Right.
I've always said there's a certain percentage of the human genome that wants to get high, and they're going to
Oh yeah.
find a way to get a hold of narcotics or other
Hmm.
drugs, and you can pass laws to prevent it. Addiction rates are probably pretty much the same, despite all these efforts to
Hmm.
curtail the market. Similarly, there's a certain percentage of the human genome that wants to get jacked, and that
Yeah.
percentage of the population is going to find a way. And if they can't get steroids, they went to pro hormones. If they can't get the pro hormones, they go to SARMs. The market evolves to meet the demand. And
Mhm.
obviously, from an illicit standpoint, the more you control or prohibit a drug, the more likely a black market will expand. And that's really what
Yeah.
happened with
Absolutely.
steroids in the
Yep.
US, where the more there was a crackdown on diverted pharmaceutical grade steroids from backdooring out of pharmaceutical companies, the
Hmm.
more the market evolved toward, at one time, it was veterinary steroids from
Yeah.
Mexico, at least
Hmm.
purportedly veterinary, but there were pictures of animals, but it was really human,
Underground
human
labs. Yeah.
intended, obviously.
Right.
And
Yeah.
now, as you know, the majority of the steroid underground market is the importation of raw powders, which are
Hmm.
then esterified by underground labs. And I've probably represented more people on steroid related issues, whether it's
Hmm.
making them and selling them, or possessing them in some cases, or using them in sports where there's a failed doping test. So,
Hmm.
but the market now pretty much is underground products that are made, in somebody's house,
Yeah.
and sometimes the quality is very high. Some people are very meticulous about
Hmm.
their products. Some of my clients have been. but I've had other clients who are not very meticulous about their
No,
products, and
no.
people are injecting these products. And from a harm reduction standpoint, I'm not so sure that the prohibition style enforcement and legal categorization that Congress and the DEA have followed has made anabolic steroid use safer. I think it's actually done the
I think
opposite.
yeah, it's on the opposite, because
Yeah.
like access to high quality pharmaceuticals or high quality home brews, underground labs, it's still limited. The market is way bigger, and not
Right.
everybody in the market is that financially secure or that connected. Like if you've been part of the bodybuilding scene for 10 years, okay, you can get anything, right? You have your standing, sources will find you, they'll offer you stuff. But when you're first getting started, maybe the first couple of years you want to get started with performance enhancing drugs, your connections are not there. And sometimes it's very hard to tell people to go in the right direction or where to actually acquire them, because you're sending people into doing that illegally, in most
Right.
countries. Like here in Thailand, I can walk into the pharmacy semi legally with a script and get pharmaceuticals prescribed, right? But I can also get them without the script, making it technically illegal. And then,
Right.
from the back door, there's underground labs of various qualities. But personally, I've learned to avoid all of them because I just don't want to subject myself to a risk in that sense anymore. Risking infection or risking that the active pharmaceutical ingredient actually something else. I've done my time experimenting, and I no longer want to do that. But people that are just getting started, due to all these laws, they don't have access to high quality pharmaceuticals. And it's funny that it's shifting. Like in Holland, you can buy weed and the mushrooms and some of the variants, right, over the counter in Smart Shop. That's all regulated to a certain extent,
Right.
so you know that the quality of the stuff that you buy is ranging from medium high to high. And
Right.
now America is adopting something similar for weed. And here in Thailand, weed
Yes.
is now also legalized, and mushrooms are going to be legalized soon.
Hmm.
So, for the recreational drug users, the market is now opened, with a couple selections. But for the steroid users, it's only getting worse. And that's why most of the, real steroid users that use it for competitive purposes, they're all technically, walking a very thin line, mostly one side on the illegal side. It's gray side and illegal side of what they have to
Right.
do. So it's really
Right.
unfortunate. Hey, I believe you got started as a criminal defense lawyer, but over the last couple of years, you're really trying to help with this these steroid cases. Can you tell me a little bit about how you got first involved with
Sure.
defending steroid people, or
Yeah.
people using steroids or producing them
Of the community,
in that community? Yeah,
the
yeah,
hardcore fitness community. I like to say that
exactly.
my practice is kind of where hardcore health and fitness meet legal and regulatory issues. So I've represented more
Okay.
people on steroid cases, but I also do a lot of work in the dietary supplement industry, particularly with sports
Hmm.
nutrition companies, companies that make protein powders, creatine, all of the things that the sports nutrition community would want and uses for performance enhancement, looking better, feeling better. So I do a lot of work in sports nutrition and dietary supplements. My background was I was a competitive bodybuilder. So back
Okay.
before I was a lawyer, so I walked the walk
Mhm.
and talked the talk back many,
Uh,
many years ago when we rode dinosaurs to work on recording.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
And and I went to law school, and it's funny because when I was in law school, it was at a time when fitness and bodybuilding was not as accepted as it was today. It was very unusual
Hmm.
to have
Right.
somebody who was in shape in a law school class. Now a
I can
lot of the
imagine. Yeah.
it's much more common now, even for both
Mhm.
men and women. But back then it was uncommon, and so there were
So
folks
you so
who
you were
made
you were the most jacked guy getting his law degree,
at
basically.
that time, yes,
Amazing.
and with a double-edged sword, because you know what, back then there was much a stronger negative stigma to it. So walking
Hmm.
around looking jacked made
Yeah.
people have certain assumptions that maybe. you weren't as smart. Maybe you weren't going to make it through the first year. You were going to fail out. I wound up actually going on being put on law review in the first year, which is kind of an accolade. And I went to law school on a full academic scholarship. I didn't pay anything
Okay,
because I
good.
had very good college grades. So, but I didn't try to prove anything. I actually doubled down. So I would go to law school in like a scoop neck tank top,
Right, to kind of
sweatshirt,
hide. Yeah,
tops.
yeah.
Back in the day, the huge multicolored, pajama pants and hat on
Oh, really?
backwards, sort of doubling down on meathead, I guess.
Yeah,
But and I've always thought, be who you are, and people will either accept it or not. But I did very
right,
well in law school. I went to work as a prosecutor after that, so putting the bad guys in jail, and I
right.
I handled robbery cases and sexual abuse cases and some people who did
Mm,
some very bad things. Then I went
yeah,
to the other side and I did criminal defense work. And the year that I went into private practice as a criminal defense lawyer was the same year that Congress in 1990 criminalized anabolic steroids and put them into
Ah,
that category of controlled substance status. So
so
timing
you
is
found your
everything.
yeah, you found your purpose. You're like,
Yeah.
over my dead body.
Uh, so it's so funny that very often it's really luck and timing that
Right.
dictates where we go in life. And
Yeah.
so when that law changed, I had a lot of connections in the fitness community and the bodybuilding community. I was well known. I had managed, day managed a gym at one time, and I had worked as a personal trainer for many years. And so suddenly, as people started getting arrested or having concerns about this change in the law and what will it mean for me as a user of anabolics, suddenly I was sort of the go-to guy, and I
Right.
wound up getting a lot more work and cases as people started getting arrested. And it was a time at that time when the police, the courts, the lawyers, the prosecutors, they had really didn't understand what this was. For all they knew, you take a tablet of Dianabol and you go into a rage and destroy the community. So
Right.
and you
Well,
also had the people, right?
that's what the media tried to portray at that time, also.
Yes,
So that you're kind
100%.
of battling against that. You have the common knowledge that steroids are going to give you roid raise, and while that's true to a certain extent, most bodybuilders are highly composed. Because
Right.
they're too tired from training.
Right.
Um, so
That
please,
that's true. And training harder
yeah,
than they would
please,
have been able to train without the steroids.
exactly, yeah. So they make themselves docile.
Yes. So
Right.
I was sort of the bridge between the folks who didn't understand what was going on in the gyms and the folks in the gyms who didn't understand what was going on in the courts. I ultimately wrote a book called Legal Muscle, which was to bridge that gap and
Mhm.
tell both sides what's going on the other side. I then started writing the column for muscular development, and one thing led to another. I have a website at steroidlaw.com that people can get some information. I consult with people all over the world. I've handled cases, steroid cases in diverse places. My knowledge of the subject matter is such that I can sometimes do things that lawyers who are very good criminal defense lawyers may not have known to do, may not have understood.
Right.
And so you mentioned before the law in 1990 changed again in 2004 and then again in 2014. And there
Mhm.
were I can think of cases I had where certain compounds didn't classify, would not be
Right.
classified as steroids under the existing law, and unless you really knew and somebody raised that issue, it could very well have gone very poorly for the client. So I've been able to do some very
Yeah.
good things. I love what I do. I'm one of the very happy lawyers. I still train very hard. To be in the
Mhm.
bodybuilding community for me is fantastic. I've done work for the IFBB Pro League. I've
Mhm.
represented many professional bodybuilders on all sorts of different issues, from unfortunate situations in criminal law, but also
Right.
situations where they've been involved with contracts with supplement companies, or representing supplement companies that have been started by pro bodybuilders. So I
Hmm.
love what I do. I enjoy it every day. I feel very blessed.
Awesome. That's a great story. It's good to hear. And you've been around now for, well, as long as I can remember. So ever since I started following the sport, I think
Which
25
is
years
hard to
ago.
believe since I'm only
I've
I'm
heard
only
you.
25 years old.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
20,
but you stopped aging a while ago, right?
yeah, I drink the blood of infants, so I don't. That's my performance
Yeah.
secret. I don't
Isn't that
age.
like that? That's the bribery, right?
Right.
At the, yeah. So if you want me to represent you, a little bit of blood, and then I can live forever. Yeah.
So,
So, we discussed a couple things in the muscular development interview. Where would you like to get started,
well,
to
let's
kind of
finish
highlight
with
that during
we
this?
did talk a little bit about access to anabolics,
Yeah. Hmm.
and we can distinguish between those who want it, at least in theory, those who want it for performance or cosmetic enhancement. And
Hmm.
most men who are using anabolic steroids are not competing. The competing
True.
population is a very small percentage of the population. Most people who are using anabolic steroids are guys who just want to look better when they take a shirt off, right? I mean, they want to look
Exactly.
better on
Yeah.
the beach when summer comes. And that's
Hmm.
that's the vast majority of them. And then in the other bucket, you have the people who are on TRT, legitimate TRT, who
Hmm.
are of a certain age. Their own natural production of testosterone has diminished. They're hypogonadal. They're not producing enough to feel good, and so they are accessing testosterone not primarily to
Hmm.
look better, but really to feel better as a
Right.
medical situation rather than a non-medical
Right.
situation.
Yep.
And so the clinics that supply testosterone, a lot of these online clinics, TRT clinics,
Hmm.
what are your thoughts on their so they're providing medical, but there may be some who are using it also cosmetically, or maybe even primarily cosmetically, right?
Yeah, so of course there's a difference there, right? And especially now over the last couple of years, more of these online TRT clinics have popped up. And I'm sponsored by one, so let's get that out of the way first. I'm sponsored by Merrick Health, and
Right.
the reason why I signed up with Merrick Health, besides all the other TRT clinics, which approached me many times before, is because I know the patient care coordinators, and I know what their philosophy is besides helping people. So there's clinics that purely prescribe, and what they prescribe is in such high dosages that it will never be recommended as a medical treatment. For example, the Liver King. I have still to this day I don't know how somebody could prescribe in 12 units of growth hormone, if not more. And I don't think he had HIV or dwarfism, maybe a little bit, but then you have to be a kid to have prescribed reasonably high doses of growth hormone. This is a cosmetic dose. And you see that with a lot of tier T clinics. They have products on their list which are not even FDA approved. Right? That's where a lot of the weird peptides come in. So what I notice is some of the clinics that do a very good job. They actually analyze the patient. They go with the symptoms, the blood work results. They offer comprehensive blood work screening. They go over the diet. They have supplemental recommendations. Right, you get the full package, and I think that's okay. It's not necessarily a tier T clinic, but it's more like a hormone optimization clinic. And whether that's through a diet or a lifestyle or supplements, or when that all fails or only gives partial results, then okay, maybe hormones are required. And then it's full hormone replacement, testosterone, maybe estradiol if you're a female, DHEA, pregnenolone, HCG if that's still available, even though that's even more restricted nowadays because somebody decided that it was going to be a biological. So the HCG market has kind of collapsed. So I think a TRT clinic that offers the full package for health, that is okay. But the large majority of them, it seems that it's prescribed for the sake of prescribing, and they might even attach a steroid lab to it, which happened multitude of times where some of these TRT clinics got busted And then the gym got raided, and they found out that the compounding pharmacy was on top of the gym, and all these crazy stories. So I think the TRT clinic, just like the SARMs and the peptides, it's a little bit in its infancy. And there's clinics out there that do it absolutely phenomenal. I work with several of them, privately through consultations, and I know the owners, and they do anti-aging on the side. I think that's totally fine, right? But it's these rogue TRT clinics that are actually glorified steroid sources that I kind of have a problem with, and then how long that will take to go away. I mean, I guess, through competition and good and bad reviews, the leaders will come forward, and the bad clinics will kind of, go bankrupt and go away with time, just like so many supplement companies have.
Right.
So,
Well, so, and that's where maybe the DEA's proposed rule will have some effect on the market. And there's been a lot, if you're following social media in the hardcore fitness arena, you've
mm,
seen, I'm sure, some posts from some influencers talking about how this new proposed rule from the Drug Enforcement Administration in the
mm,
US is going to take away testosterone replacement for men, by requiring that every man who's on TRT has to go to the clinic in person every 30 days in order to continue to have the prescription. And
mm,
I've done a few podcasts recently about that. And anybody who wants to see them can go to my Instagram page at Rick Collins ESQ, and
awesome.
which you'll see at some point.
Yeah,
And please follow me. I try to give some legal information that you might not find elsewhere. But
no, for sure.
the idea that you have to see this doctor every 30 days is false. That's not
Mm,
true. There's nothing in the rule that talks about that. What the rule does say is that within 30 days of getting a prescription for a controlled substance, you need to have some medical evaluation in person, either by the doctor prescribing or your own doctor local to you, who then interacts with and interfaces with you and the prescribing doctor. Once
right.
that one single in-person evaluation is finished, that's it. There's no more every 30 days or anything like that.
Mm.
Now,
Is there a yearly follow up? Like, I have my script here in Thailand, and I have to go in for a yearly follow up just to show that I'm still healthy and I'm not overdoing it. So I have to
the
time my
rule,
blood work
yeah.
parameters a little bit during this time.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I self
yeah,
prescribe also. I mean, that's the
right,
whole foundation of my YouTube channel, self
yes.
experimentation.
That's right. That's right. And I love your content.
Thank you.
Um, but the bottom line is there's nothing in the rule that says that. Although certainly getting periodic in-person medical evaluations, if you're on any long-term drug, is probably a good thing.
I
Um,
think so.
but,
Yeah.
but I think what is being missed in a lot of this is that in 2008, the U.S. Congress passed a law that requires for any controlled substance that the patient physically see the doctor in person before the prescription is written. That's Congress that set that rule,
Mm,
and that was in 2008. But that rule wasn't set because of TRT. That rule
mm,
was set because some 18-year-old kid went online to some rogue pharmacy clinic, got Vicodin, and overdosed and died. And so
yeah.
that became a cause celeb. And in his name, an act was passed by Congress that requires the in person evaluation before the prescription for a controlled substance gets written. And Congress wasn't thinking about testosterone. Congress was thinking
No.
about Vicodin and opiates and painkillers and narcotics, so, which could cause people to overdose. And
Mm,
probably Congress didn't even think that testosterone was a controlled substance, that they had done it, almost 20 years earlier. I don't think they were
right.
even focused on that, right?
I don't think so either.
So when in 2020, when the DEA found that there was a public health emergency that affected telemedicine, they suspended that rule requiring the law, the enforcement of the law that required
Right.
an in person prescription before. So for the last couple, 3 years, we've had a situation, 2.5 years, where there's been no requirement of the face to face in person meeting. But that's only because there was kind of this timeout on an existing
Yeah.
law by Congress. So
Nobody
what
was
is
allowed to
now
go outside, so they had to open the doors for
right,
telemedicine.
right. We were told to stay home. Everybody was told
Yeah.
stay home. There were signs here in where I'm in New York. There were signs over the highways blaring stay home" for
Yeah. Yeah,
months.
with
So
curfews and full body armor and yeah. Yeah, I know. It turned into a little
double
bit of an
face
apocalypse.
masks,
Yeah.
visors,
Yeah, yeah.
hazmat
Yeah.
suits,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Man,
so
good
during
times.
that period, they suspended the rules. So now the government, the U.S. government, has said that as of May 11th of this year, the emergency is over. So so now the question becomes, well, what do we do now that this exemption of the emergency is over? And so DEA has proposed this rule which is actually more lenient than what existed before the emergency. Because remember, before you had to have this face to face before you got the prescription.
Right.
Now, what this rule is proposing is you can get the prescription and then within 30 days you see the doctor. So it's actually better than it was before, but certainly
Mm.
not as good as it's been the last 2.5 years for patients' convenience from that perspective.
Right.
Um, does it make sense maybe for people who are getting opiate prescriptions that that maybe there should be some kind of in person evaluation to make sure that it's needed, that they're not an addict, that they're not,
Mm.
maybe. Does it make
Yeah,
sense for
well,
TRT? No, I don't think it does. Especially 30 days, the effects of the TRT are certainly not going to mean anything. And how do you determine, how does an in person evaluation mean really much for whether you're eligible or need TRT, whether you're hypogonadal
it,
anyway?
it, it it's no different than telemedicine consultations because in the end it's decided on symptoms and blood work results, and physically you don't have to be there unless the DEA or ruling bodies starts checking for side effects like erectile dysfunction or hair loss or gynecomastia, acne. Maybe
Right.
that's why they need a physical examination. But I think it's just very unfortunate that testosterone and TRT in general is classified with these other highly addictive and potentially deadly drugs. When okay, testosterone, if you use it as a medicine, of course it's addictive because now you finally feel better, right? You don't want to come off because now you're finally out of this slump of androgen deficiency.
The
And
same could be
regarding
true of going to the gym or eating
well,
a good diet, or I mean, everything can
ex-
potentially be addictive. But I would
ex-
agree with you completely. I think Congress made a misstep in
mhm,
categorizing testosterone and other anabolic steroids as controlled substances. And interestingly, the back in the late 80s, before Congress took that action, the DEA, the American Medical Association, the Food and Drug Administration,
yeah,
and the
voted
National
against it.
Institute on Drug Abuse all sent witnesses to testify to Congress saying, don't do
Yeah,
this. It doesn't
yeah,
belong treated that way. Um, our current president was one of
mhm.
the cheerleaders actually
Yeah,
to make steroids a controlled substance. Joe Biden kind of led the charge to classify steroids in the category that they are, which then
mhm.
puts them into this situation where this new rule proposed by DEA affects TRT.
Yeah. So what I would have liked to see from some of the American influencers at that time, maybe a little bit of awareness, and maybe for the next guy we can bring a little bit of awareness. If they're anti-steroid or anti-performance enhancing drugs in general, maybe we can raise awareness to sway people towards another candidate. Because this is, that's why we're in this mess now. That's why ACG is also a little bit more difficult to acquire. Even though you need that for fertility purposes when you're on TRT. For
Right.
overall well-being and hormone function, because you're shutting your testicles down, and a little bit of HCG can keep that going, and make fertility after TRT or after a steroid cycle certainly a lot easier to get back. So it's yeah, it's very unfortunate, and I see that Oregon is leading the way a little bit by
Yes,
decriminalizing a lot of recreational drugs and also steroids. But you know how long it will take for the rest of the United States and the world in general to catch up.
right, right.
I'm very you know headstrong that it will happen in our lifetime. If anything, it gets more restrictive, but in other cases, it gets a little bit more easy as well. And you know, otherwise, guys, you do what I do. You start working online, and you go to a country that treats you a little bit better if you're interested in steroids. And I just have to walk into the pharmacy and get my information online on how to use them safely. You know, it's a huge learning curve, but yeah, there is always a way if there's a will. I would say,
Yes. Yes,
yeah.
that is true, and I guess the only thing I'd say about the possibility of descheduling testosterone or reducing testosterone in its categorization as a controlled substance is that there is a movement here in the U.S.
Okay.
Which is being led by the trans community of the
Aha.
LGBT
Hmm.
community under the idea that somebody who's assigned female at birth, who
Hmm.
is seeking to become either a male, or
Hmm.
simply to be more masculine along some non-binary spectrum, that
Hmm.
the controlled substance status of testosterone, which is the key hormone that enables that to happen, that it places an undue stigma upon members of the trans community,
Hmm.
that it restricts access, it's inconvenient, it does all of these things. And so, actually, two U.S. senators have written a letter asking the Biden administration to deschedule testosterone and remove it
Hmm.
from controlled substance status, or to reduce it from a category 3 to a category 5. It's a fascinating thing. I've written about it. There's some links
Hmm.
on my bio on Instagram to some articles that I've written about it. But it is fascinating because it really makes the trans community and the hardcore fitness community and the TRT community really strange bedfellows in all having this interest.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but the bodybuilding community has had poor lobby. No one really cares from a political perspective what bodybuilders want, but there is a
Yeah.
lot of concern and a lot of clout from a political perspective in the
Mm.
LGBTQIA community.
Right. Hmm.
And so they have the attention of Congress on this issue. Where it's going to go, will it go anywhere? I don't know, but
Time
it's
will
really
tell. Yeah.
yeah, time will tell. It's the first time really that I've seen politicians at the federal level looking at testosterone and saying, well, wait a minute, why are we treating this in the same way that we treat heroin and cocaine
It's
and
silly.
drugs of
It's silly,
abuse?
especially considering it's a bioidentical compound that men and women produce naturally. And if women can use birth control, which I think is worse than TRT, you know, when you look at the outcomes on scientific evidence, I would say that TRT is a little bit safer, all things considering, that than a lifetime on birth control. So, you know, I guess it's just time will tell. And you got to keep in mind, like the bodybuilding community will always find a way, whether it's legal or not. Like in
Right,
Holland, for example, it's not legal. They have like one or two TRT clinics nowadays, and a couple of prescribing doctors, and that's it. So when I started experimenting with steroids, again, I had to get it from another guy at the gym, and I was very lucky that the other guy at the gym had a hookup for pharmaceutical products, which were FDA approved either in Holland or other countries. So I've had access to quality products since the beginning, and I was always very selective. But again, you know, not everybody has that choice, unfortunately.
right,
And that's what I hopefully can change over the next couple of years because, like you know, as long as you educate yourself, you do your blood work, and you maybe seek some guidance, whether that's in a form of a doctor or a knowledgeable coach, which there are many out there nowadays. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. You know, if you want to use it for cosmetic purposes or even medical purposes, you know, and if you want to make that transition from male to female or vice versa, I mean, you should be within your own right to do that as well, assuming that they're adults. I think for kids it's a little bit, I don't know. That doesn't sit well with me. But that's a
Well,
subject for a whole other video.
that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah, so we'll
But
pass. Yeah.
but yeah, I think we are looking as a society more and more at drug abuse and drug misuse from a
Hmm.
harm reduction standpoint. How do we reduce the harms? That's become a kind of a big theme in policy in the U.S., particularly at the state level. How do we make it safer? So we now have like needle exchange programs, but we're really most of the harm reduction is only focused on the traditional drugs of abuse, narcotics,
Right.
addictive narcotics.
Hmm.
Um, the next level, I think, at some point, we need to look at and we need to get policymakers to look at the issue of harm reduction for other drugs, including testosterone and anabolic steroids, because there are no policies that I'm aware of that really focus on testosterone and other anabolic steroids in the United States to reduce the harms.
No, no, not that. I mean, most guys get their harm reduction online through the steroid educators. I mean, this is one of the
Right,
reasons why I have a job. I try to
right,
actively, promote harm reduction or at least safer practices of newer compounds, and
right,
then teach from my own experience and from the scientific evidence if it's available. And then people eventually have to make their own decision on whether it's worth it to them or not. And of course, again, time will tell if that in a year or 10 years or maybe a lifetime plays out, because the science is ever evolving and the practices are ever evolving. If you compare TRT clinics now to 10 years ago, the TRT clinics of now are a lot more educated and a lot more knowledgeable, even though sometimes the scientific literature is still a bit behind. It's yeah, I think it's just a matter of time, but how long it will take to really have good TRT clinics that can operate in a way that the government sees fit, so it can meet the client. I don't know.
right,
It's it might still take a while, and in that case, the whole TRT community will be taken care of. The bodybuilders won't.
right, right.
What we do with our bodies is still a little bit outside of the medical realm.
Right. Well, it's by definition virtually non-medical, right? I mean, at,
Yeah.
at, at the at the extreme of bodybuilding, where somebody's perfectly healthy, they have no medical issues. It's purely to look better. It's a purely
Right.
aesthetic or
Mhm.
cosmetic drug, and there's a whole nother way of looking at it in the sense that if it is cosmetic, we do allow other medical technologies
Oh
to
yeah.
make
Hmm.
people look better. So you can get breast augmentation, you can get buttocks implants, you can even
Yeah.
get deltoid, bicep implants, all of these different surgical procedures. You
Right.
can get Botox in your face. You can do all of
Hmm.
these things for no medical reason. They're medical procedures, but there's no medical need. These are pure just cosmetic surgery and cosmetic procedures, and we allow all of that, even though many of those things have risks that arguably would
Oh
be
yeah.
greater than the risks. It certainly, we've heard of horror stories. I heard of one guy who went to Mexico to get calf implants more cheaply and came
Hmm.
back and they got infected and ultimately he had a double amputation of his
Uh,
legs because of this. So and certainly people have died on the liposuction table. So we
right. Yeah, that's
allow
true.
these
Also, yeah.
things,
Yeah.
and yet we scoff at the idea that steroids or any kind of androgens would be used for cosmetic purposes. Somehow that's unacceptable. It's somewhat
Yeah.
seems somewhat arbitrary, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. But like, I'm not making the rules, and I think most of
Right.
our people in our community would not agree with those rules and are happy to break them for their own vanity. And they're like, yeah, whatever. I know more about this than the government does, and then they'll
Right.
proceed accordingly. And then sometimes, unfortunately, get caught in a legal stint that way.
Right. Then,
But
then I get the phone. Then suddenly I'm getting a phone call.
yeah. So how many retainers do you currently have running, just in case?
Oh, I have dozens, and I've probably in my years I've probably been involved with 2,000, 3,000 clients,
Wow.
situations, consultations regarding anabolic steroid problems, legal issues. I was looking at it the other day. I've been to 40 different U.S. courthouses spread out throughout the United States, federal courthouses. I'm not sure there's many other or any other lawyers that have traveled so widely because of
Hmm.
the niche of what they do. So,
If you're
but
the
yeah,
go-to
I'm
guy, you're in
interested.
demand, and I
It's
don't
a
think
good
there's,
thing.
yeah,
It's
there's
a
not
good
many
thing.
guys like you know, with your experience
Yeah,
and
and,
knowledge.
and and I can help people. It gives me an opportunity to help people in a way that they might not otherwise be helped. So I'm happy. But enough about me. I want to get back to
Okay,
you, and I
sure.
want to talk a little bit about what brought us together initially in our conversation in at the in Las Vegas was the Liver King issue, and I just
Hmm.
want to go through that because we did talk about in the magazine how you came into contact. And I know you've told this story before on your channel,
Right.
and many of the folks who are familiar with you may know this already. There may be some folks. I'm going to share this with my followers. They may not know as much about
Sure.
the backstory, and what we've seen in the news didn't really categorize the truth of your relationship with him. Some of the news made it sound like, oh, you were his trainer for years and years, and
Yeah.
then
Right.
suddenly divulged, the secrets of what you were doing with him. None of that is true.
Right.
So let's just go through it just to set the record straight.
So Brian, before he was ever the Liver King, contacted me with the plan to become the Liver King. I'm not exactly sure if his plan was to become exactly what he turned into be. I think he became larger than life, and that's why the lies continued for so long.
Right.
But he did want it to become famous. You know, that was the whole stint. So he needed a guy to help him give steroid advice and keep him healthy, but do that quietly. Now, at the time, I was like, we had a consultation. We talked for a bit, and he seemed like a very high-driven individual. Successful guy, running multitude of businesses, financially secure.
And this was
Right.
back in 2021, right?
Yeah, yeah. So this is close to 2 years ago now. Yeah.
Right.
So he was doing well for himself, and he had this vision of becoming popular. He shared some of the supplements that he wanted to start promoting, which I gave him some suggestion on that proprietary blends are not really the go-to way for people in the fitness industry, but apparently his audience doesn't really care about that. So we did a consultation. Then, I told him that I accepted him as a client. I sent him my questionnaire, which then ended up in the documentary that Derek posted, and that people piece together within like 4 or 5 days. Said, oh, the time zone and the way it's written, it must be Steve. So I sent it to him. He took some time to fill it out. Then I got it back, and I took some time to kind of write him his diet, and analyze his blood work results, because at that time I was very busy. I had a lot of clients, and I was kind of slowly transitioning out of coaching, actually. And fun fact is that Brian is one of the last guys that I actually accepted as a coaching client. Now, because after that I got so disgruntled. I was like,
Right.
I don't want to do this shit anymore. So basically, I sent him his diet just to show him that his diet model was very poor. Everything I know about nutrition, it didn't really, it didn't make sense to me at all. Now, that being said, I'm not that familiar with the carnivore diet. I tried it myself, and when I tried it myself, my blood work parameters were all over the place, and it's exactly what his blood work showed. It was all over the place. Now, out of respect, that was never posted, his blood work, and I don't think it will ever will be, because the damage is already done and he came clean to a certain extent. So there's no reason to kind of drive that any further than was already done. And he asked Derek not to post it, so we got to respect that. Um, so basically, I sent him the diet. I tried to help him with his IGF-1 deficiency, or self-induced IGF-1 deficiency, even though it was prescribed like 15 units or 12 units of growth hormone by a compounding pharmacy somehow, and all kinds of secretagogues, and a protocol that didn't make sense to me. And I honestly, at that time, thought he was already lying about his drug protocol. because his blood work parameters didn't represent what he sent to me. Um, and
So you thought he was on more
yeah,
compounds or higher doses than he was admitting
yes,
to you?
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So when I looked at his blood work, I mean, I've seen blood work from, I mean, no joke, thousands, a multitude of thousands of people over the 15 years that have been helping bodybuilders. And especially ever since I started doing consultations, most of my blood work, or most of my consultations are blood work consultations, and I have multiple per day for the last couple of years. So I've seen a lot of blood work, and I know what each drug does separately in combination with the blood work, especially in combination with the carnivore diet. So it didn't make sense to me, or he had super good genetics. But, I realized after coaching people for such a long time, sometimes you need to warm up to each other a little bit. I get it. I did this, but if you can admit to 12 units of growth hormone, why can't you admit to higher dosage of steroids? Right. So it didn't make sense to me. Anyway, I sent him the dietitian to show him that his diet model was poor, and that was one of the reasons why his blood work parameters were off. So when I asked him at one point if he could do additional screening for his organs because I was concerned. This is a typical scenario where the coach is more concerned for the client's health than the client is
Hmm.
exactly.
Hmm. Right.
He didn't want to do it. He didn't want to do it. And I just saw too many red flags. So I said, I can't work with you. Here's your money back, which he said I never refunded him, but I'm pretty sure I refunded him. And the next step would be doxing his address with a PayPal statement, which is, another level of evil. So I'll just eat that. And I,
Right.
I hurt him by exposing him. And if he wants to hurt me by saying that I didn't refund him, then I guess we're even. Um, but I'm very sure that I refunded him. Anyway, so I didn't hear from him for after that, and I didn't hear from him ever until he became popular and he started going on podcasts. He went on Mark Bell, emphasizing that he was natural, which made me feel sick to my stomach. And then he went on Mark Harley's podcast, or another guy in Los Angeles. So I had a podcast with Mark Harley, and then he was literally in the studio right next to him. He did a podcast collaboration together. Then he went to the other guy, proclaiming to be natural, and then it just got worse and worse and worse. Right? You don't need to do blood work. I don't brush my teeth, which that's fine. That's your stint. That's your WWE persona that you want to play. That's fine, But it just his him as an individual, the blood work results and the diet model was just bad. And then him trying to pretend that his supplements and his lifestyle and is so healthy while simultaneously being in a very poor state of health, it rubbed me the wrong way. So when Derek wanted to do a documentary because he had additional information, Liver King himself sent him an email that he wanted to have drug advice, and that was actually before he contacted me. But Derek never responded because he was too busy. And then one of his coworkers did a similar email. I think that was after I let him go. So when he pieced it all of that together, I said, this is starting to kind of make me sick to my stomach. Here are the emails that I got from him. You can use this in a redacted form to make a documentary and give him an opportunity to come clean, because he was never going to come clean if nobody pushed his buttons.
Right.
He would just continue to lie and continue to lie. And,
Right.
and honestly, he says that he's drug free now, but I don't believe a cent of it. I
And a
believe it.
lot of his, I mean, all of his products and sort of the empire that he built was premised
Mhm.
on the idea that by taking raw organs and
Yeah,
his glandular and products and whatnot, that you would be able to potentially attain that kind of a physique.
hmm,
So it's one thing, I guess, if you're just pretending to be natural, you're a fake natty, and
yeah,
you're that's just your business, and you're not selling anything based on that. But his whole product line was based on the idea that he didn't take steroids, and that
right.
what you could do by following his ancestral tenets and taking
Hmm.
his supplements, that you would potentially look like him.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's so far from the truth. That's one of the reasons why he got sued.
Right.
And if
So
you want an
let me
accurate,
ask you, how long was your interaction with him from start to finish?
we did one consultation and a couple messages over WhatsApp. over the duration of maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and then I
Wow.
decided to throw in the towel.
Wow.
Yeah, and I've done that before, where you just see too many red flags of these athletes that don't want to follow suit. They have their own ideas of what they want to accomplish. That's fine, but not under my guidance. Because I want to make my athletes healthy, and if I knew what the Liver King was going to be, then I would have never accepted him because he wanted to be me to be complicit in these lies. So imagine if imagine if he kept lying and saying you can accomplish this. Just take my supplements and you'll look exactly like me. You'll be not depressed and you'll be full of life and blah blah blah. And I would be in the background helping his drug protocol and his blood work. I
Hmm.
would have been in such a horrible state of mind and been in such a horrible position towards the rest of the fitness industry if he ever got exposed because, oh, Steve was helping him all along for the last 5 years. No, no,
Right. Right.
three
Right.
weeks. And I did my best, but he didn't want to listen. And I still suspect that has non alcoholic fatty liver disease, which I disclosed to you guys in the muscular development article. All the signs led to non alcoholic fatty liver disease, as was observed while I
Which
studied him.
presents a certain irony that he calls
Yeah,
himself the Liver King, right? Right.
exactly. Yeah, it's highly ironic, and I really hope he got it resolved because I don't wish that medical condition on anybody. I
Right.
had my stint with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. That's why I
Right.
knew exactly, or I'm 99% sure that he had a similar medical condition because I had it myself, and it took ages to resolve.
Right.
Ages. And you can't
Right.
resolve it while you're on steroids. You need to come off steroids. So the hepatocyte, the what is it, the cells in the liver can actually regenerate.
Hmm.
So yeah, and for that he would not be the person he is now because all the muscles would go away.
Right.
And he would not be able to market his product. So I
Sure.
hope he got it fixed, but I highly
Yeah.
doubt it. And I till this day I haven't seen any blood work results. I haven't seen a WADA approved doping test, randomly. I haven't seen organ imaging, which I honestly wish that he would have done so people could take him seriously. But when that apology video came out, he tried to spin it in a way that all of his drug use and his persona was about suicide prevention. But where
Yeah.
were all the suicide prevention donations or the suicide
Yeah.
prevention videos? So
Yeah.
I don't know, this persona. I mean, these people will just pop up once in a while, and what I'm personally highly surprised of is that he still somehow grew his social media following
Well,
after
that's
getting
yes.
exposed.
He actually, believe it or not, I mean, obviously there was a lawsuit that followed. There was a
Hmm.
$25 million class action lawsuit that was filed in New York based on
Hmm.
the misrepresentations to the people who bought his products that
Right.
if they took the products, they could look like that, and that he didn't use steroids, and that kind of fraudulent aspect to it.
Yep.
And that was filed. And just recently, I guess, bit of hot off the press news is
Hmm.
that just last week there was a filing in New York that the a voluntary discontinuance with prejudice, which means the lawsuit is over, it's gone. There's
Hmm.
nothing. It's a docket that has almost nothing on it. There are no motions in the court docket, so we can only
Hmm.
speculate about why it's been discontinued. Often, in my experience, that signifies that there may have been some settlement,
Hmm.
negotiated settlement, and typically those settlement agreements would have a confidentiality component to them, so it
Right.
couldn't be
Hmm.
disclosed. So we can only speculate. We'll never know what exactly happened, but the lawsuit is done, and as you point out, it looks like his followers have grown.
Yeah. So I can't feel too bad for him because somehow, some way, he was able to convince people that he's natural, and people still support him, even though he lied to the audience, his fans and supporters, for 1.5 years straight. But I guess that's the
People want
nature
to
of the
believe.
fitness
There are some
industry.
people
Yeah,
who
people
just
want to
want
believe.
to believe. They want to believe. They're invested in, and there's been psychological studies that show that people would rather cling to their existing belief when
Hmm.
confronted with contrary evidence than to change what they believe
Yeah.
to adopt the irrefutable evidence. So and he's very charismatic, obviously, and it's a good story. And
Yeah.
I think he's just able to twist it and sell it, and people want to continue to kind of follow him.
Yeah, I think that's one of the key characteristics of a sociopath, right? They're very charismatic. So, I mean, I wish him all the best. I just hope this guy takes care of his health and at one point realizes that, a business model that's based on lies is just bad karma.
Yeah, yeah,
And I know so many people in the fitness industry who base their business model on truth, and maybe they don't grow as fast, or maybe they're not that exciting to listen to, but they're here for the long run. They're here
right,
for decades. They're not here for the 5 year stint, make their money, and then disappear, and then everybody laughs at them for the practices that they do. I know people like Dante Trudel, for example, a slow grower, TrueNutrition.com. He's been in the business for decades, and everybody loves him and everybody
right,
respects him. You know,
right.
and he'll be here for another couple of decades, until he decides like, okay, I'm done. But it's not because he made so much money; he's just tired of it.
Wow.
So
So what's up
yeah,
for what's next for you? What's your
for,
next?
for me, I just want to continue to educate the masses through my own experiences and scientific evidence, and I keep growing my YouTube channel. So we're now, pushing 77,000 subscribers, and hopefully by the end of the year, I can get to 100,000. That would be nice. And it grows slowly, but people know that I don't sell out. I'm
Right,
not going to turn my channel into a reaction channel or finger pointing channel or negativity drama channel. That's not
right.
me, right? I try to produce high quality content that is life changing for people in the fitness industry. And judging by the response when I went to the Mr. Olympia, that's exactly what's happening. So I felt very good about, what I've accomplished the last couple of years, just judging by the interactions that I've had, like with you and so many people in the fitness industry that apparently were watching my stuff. So that's people, like respectable people that I respect. They respect me back. So that's basically all I wanted out of this. And now that I feel that, I just keep going as is. And yeah, so it's a lot of fun. Yeah. And then the next step for me personally is kind of having kids. So that's why I'm actually coming off
Right.
cycle, not 100% natural, right? I use fertility medications,
Hmm.
so close to natural, but endogenously produce testosterone, 800 milligrams per deciliter or nanograms per deciliter. And I
Okay.
think with the next couple of months, hopefully my wife will be pregnant, and then by the end of yeah, let's say early next year, we'll have a little Steve running around, or
Well,
Stephine.
well,
Yeah, that's the
or
plan.
Stephanie, right? Yep. We'll
Stephanie,
have to
right?
see, but well, hopefully
Yeah,
that's a great that's a whole nother phase of life, as you will see.
right.
And in the interview, we kind of wrapped up a little bit, as I recall, kind of talking
Hmm.
about life after bodybuilding and sort of
Right.
changed priorities, whether it's that you're at the sort of tail end of your competitive career, or your priorities change. It may be that you're reaching a certain age where you're starting to accrue all of those little aches and pains and weaknesses that may come after a lifetime of beating the living crap out of your shoulders, knees, hips, and lower back.
Tell me about it.
Um, or it may be, like you say, that it's time to start a family, and it's time to
Right.
reevaluate what's important. And I recall you gave some good advice about kind of walking some people through that idea that it's okay to change your priorities in
Yeah.
life. It's your priorities today may not be your priorities tomorrow. Hopefully,
Mhm.
fitness will always be part of what
Right.
all of us do. I know it's going to be for you. You know it's going
Hmm.
to be for me. I've been hitting the gym. I train at Bev Francis Gym on the East Coast
Oh
Mecca.
wow,
Been for
amazing.
25 years. And I I'll never stop going to the gym. I'll never stop
Right.
training. But certainly when it comes to the extent of the training, the volume of the training or supplements for the training, all of those things you may have different priorities at different stages of life, and that's okay, right?
Yeah, no, I think it's certainly okay. And at one point, we all have to throw in the towel to a certain extent. Like we can still go to the gym, we can still take performance enhancing drugs, albeit lower dosages, and excluding the laundry list of stuff that we took in our younger years when we could still tolerate it. Because as you get older, your blood work parameters are just unmanageable on some of these drugs, and hopefully by that time you've built a foundation, that was fueled in the dungeon, so to say, and then it's actually very easy to maintain it. You can actually maintain it on TRT. And even though most bodybuilders would say, no, I need at least 500 milligrams a test, that's like partial addiction that you don't want to admit to, right?
Right.
And a lot of guys say, I need this much drugs to look good. But in reality, you can accomplish a lot with training and nutrition already. I'm trying to diet down right now on HCG and HMG therapy for fertility, and I'm getting lean just the same. I'm still reasonably strong. Am I freakishly big as before? No, of course not. But the muscularity is still there, and the shape is still there, just less impressive than before. And for this less impressive physique, I gain more business. I'm more successful in business. I have more free time to spend on other endeavors. I'm
Right.
more knowledgeable, right? I can spend more time with my wife because bodybuilding is such a consuming sport. If you really
No
want to do
question.
it properly, going to the gym and deep station massage therapy and posing practice and cooking 6 meals and eating them, right? And doing 400 injections every day. Oh, that's an exaggeration, but you guys know what I'm talking about. It's more than one every day.
Right.
So if you take a couple steps back, you can still maintain maybe 75 or 80% of your physique with maybe 20% of the effort. And then you have 80% to spend on something else. And you're
Right.
still a bodybuilder, albeit less impressive. You're still a businessman, you're still a husband and a father and a man and all these stuff you still are, but you're just smaller when you look in the mirror. And I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I don't think that's and let's be honest, we all look better a little bit smaller, you
Well,
know?
yeah. A little
Let's
smaller,
let's
a little more definition, a little more cuts.
exactly.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So if you can't maintain the size, you can still maintain the shape, and the abs and the six pack. Just a matter of suffering and dieting. And sometimes you don't have time for that. You're busy with work, and I go through my phases where everything's about work and income and leveling up in that sense. Okay, the diet slacks a little bit, but you maintain that capacity that you had in the past. Okay, if I put my mind to it, I'm going to start training harder and diet harder and maybe ramp up the dosages a little bit to where my health parameters allow me to, you can still get your physique back to a certain extent. So I think it's totally normal to take a step back when you get older and then level up other aspects of your life because bodybuilding is just you're basically renting a very expensive house and when you stop paying rent or that much rent, you go back to a smaller house, but you still got a roof over your head. you,
Right.
you still have a bedroom and a toilet and maybe a living room, but you just don't
Right.
have 6 bedrooms and 5 living rooms and four
Okay.
toilets, you know.
Right. That's a
So
good analogy.
so yeah, so that was kind of my message to the muscular development audience because I know
Yes.
that a lot of guys that started with their muscular development when they were 20, but that was 20, 30 years ago,
Sure.
right? So a lot of the audience is now in their 40s, 50s, maybe even older, and I'm sure many of guys remember or are going through that. Okay, at one point the body didn't cooperate. I had to take a step back, and even though I don't look as good as I used to, I still have these pictures, and I can remember those times fondly. But now I'm actually, all things considering, I'm way ahead, right? So I'm
No,
way
no
ahead now
question
than
about
where I was 4 years ago. Yeah, 4 years ago when I was a meathead, I'm
it.
way
Right.
ahead now all things
Right.
considered. Yeah, I'm just smaller.
Right.
Doesn't
Yeah.
matter, you
And you
know.
you really can keep a lot of the size. I mean, I stay at about 220, 225, which,
Right.
for a guy, I'm not 240, I'm not 250, but that's a good
Mhm.
solid weight for me at like 5'10", 5'11". And I,
Mhm. It's a
do
head
I
turning
do,
physique. It's a head turning size. When you're like,
yes,
I remember I saw you at the Mr. Olympia, and you're still turning heads. And as long as you do that, I think your integrity and your ego stays elevated a little bit
yes.
because you know
But
that
it
you're
gets
still
you, yeah,
big and
obviously we know that confidence comes from walking into a room and having that, having that physique. But
Mhm.
but you don't need to do singles or doubles. I don't do
Yeah.
flat benching. There was a time when I was doing 405 for five on the bench.
Yeah.
No, I don't need to do. I have nothing left to prove on any of that. So I keep the reps higher. I keep
Hmm.
the rests shorter.
Right.
I'll vary the tempo in training. I'll do slow repetitions, slow negatives, wherever I can maybe use a little bit less weight to give the
Right.
joints, to accommodate aging joints. I'll do that.
Hmm.
But to have the intensity, because I still love the intensity. I love and I'll never
Of
lose
course.
that.
Right.
I love
Right.
going into the gym. I've got a great little training crew, a posse of training partners that I've been with for decades.
Hmm.
And so there's
Awesome.
I never want to give that up. I come from a time, and I had this conversation with somebody at Bev's just recently. I come from the day
Mhm.
before we were using earbuds, before we had,
Right.
maybe
Yeah.
before iPods, so I grew up at a time in the gym culture where the only music was the sound system, if the gym had a sound
Mhm.
system. And if not, all you heard was the rattling of those 45-pound plates and
Right. Like a
the exert.
gymnasium. Yeah.
It was, yeah, absolutely. And I still love that. I still don't wear anything. I don't listen to music independently in
Okay.
the gym. Never have. I feel that disconnects me from what I'm doing. I
Hmm.
like to hear the plates. I like to feel. I like the ambiance. I like the gym. And so I
Right.
don't want to cut myself off from that. I want to be part of that. I want to hear what a training partner is going to say to me if I'm pushing through those last reps.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so I've always, I grew up at a time when we even didn't have the supplements that exist today on all
Right.
levels,
I
but
remember. Yeah, that
particularly
I do remember. Yeah,
it
I
was
remember.
before. For me, there was a time, you won't remember this, but there
Mhm.
was a time when protein supplements were like weight gainers. There was no whey protein,
Yeah.
and one form of protein was a bottle. It looked like a cough medicine bottle of cherry flavored collagen protein. It was like a syrup that was probably one of the worst things you could ever put in your mouth. It was absolutely wretched, and you would
Uh,
pour it onto a spoon and take spoonfuls of this collagen protein, and
yeah.
then you'd take a handful of desiccated liver
Right.
tablets and put them
Yeah. Slide
down,
them down.
and that was your supplement regimen back then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Creatine didn't exist.
No. Right. Yeah.
There were no pre-workouts. So yeah, we've evolved in a long way,
Hmm.
and that's maybe another discussion that we can have sometime, is to talk
Hmm.
more about diet and nutrition and supplementation for
Hmm.
from a dietary supplement standpoint, from a sports nutrition standpoint, for either gaining size or cutting, and even some training. And I told you a little bit about my training, but a few years ago I wrote a book, co-authored a book called Alpha Male Challenge, which was a
Hmm.
training, diet, and exercise book, and kind of attitude book for men who are maybe 30 and up, and are either
Hmm.
trying to stay in top physical form or trying to get back into top physical form, and talked a lot in that book about supplementation, and a lot about diet and exercise, and what's the best way, or some of the best ways to eat. You talked about the carnivore diet a little bit,
Hmm.
um, and so everybody's got their own theories of what's best, whether it's carnivore or keto. And now we're going through this whole plant based.
Oh
Everything
yeah.
is
Yeah. It's
Everybody
always
wants
a fad.
based.
Yeah.
It's a fad that comes and it goes, and a lot of it doesn't even make any
Mhm.
sense. But yeah, we could have another conversation about that
Yeah.
at some
Sure.
point.
Anytime.
But
Yeah.
this was I really appreciate your
Thank
hosting
you.
me, and letting me join you on your channel, and again, thank you for coming to Muscular Development and offering all of your thoughts there. Again, that's available online on Muscular Development, and anybody can read our conversation there. and I will share and repost this, and for some folks who follow me, and hopefully I'll certainly encourage them to follow you as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was an honor to meet you at the Mr. Olympia. And thanks so much for the opportunity to let me into muscular development because that's one of those bucket list things as a bodybuilder. And even though my physique is, I don't think cover worthy, not like Chris Bumstead. I mean, he's a phenom, obviously, but
Yeah,
just to
yeah.
be
So
featured.
this is the cover. So it's
Yeah,
it's
yeah, I'm
it's
not on
tough.
the cover, guys, but I have a
Yeah.
couple pages
Okay.
in muscular development. So yeah, that was
But
certainly a bucket list thing, and muscular development outlived most of the other magazines.
yes.
So it is like Flex magazine isn't around anymore, right? And
Yes.
Muscle Mag, yeah,
Yeah.
those are
So
gone.
so
So
yeah, we're we've been a hardcore bodybuilding magazine for many
mhm.
years. There's your buddy there,
Yeah, Big
Brian
Brian.
Johnson. So
Yeah.
yeah, and it was billed as a special feature, and it
Mhm.
is one of the certainly one of the longer, if not the longest feature in the magazine this
Oh,
month.
really?
So
Okay. Wow.
yeah, you've made it. You've
Yes.
attained fitness celebrity, my friend.
Not bad for some weird YouTuber in Thailand. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Where can people find you? Where can they find
So
you?
yeah, so Instagram is a great place to find me at Rick Collins ESQ. If you want online, come to steroidlaw.com or rickcollins.com. I'm easy to find. You can message me through social media. You can call my office, and my staff gets in touch with me. If you have a legal problem of any kind, and you need some a lawyer in who can help you. If I can't help you, I know people who can wherever you are. So certainly feel free to reach out.
Yeah. I'll have you on speed dial for when I come to the America next. And if it's not for a legal issue, we'll grab some lunch or grab a couple
That
beers.
sounds that'll be awesome. Looking forward to it.
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly. Yeah, I'll see you soon. Thanks very much for coming on. And guys, peace out.